On today's show, the Bucks split a weekend back-to-back. They dominate the Utah Jazz, but on the second leg at altitude, it was a bad second half. There was frustration. The officiating was terrible, but ultimately the Bucks do lose a game, which makes things interesting in the standings. We're going to break it all down, so let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. Thanks for joining us. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that's brought to you by Ultimate Basketball GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing your own basketball franchise, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebasketballgm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's all caps there in the game store. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We thank everyone for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or listen of every single day. And on weekends like tonight, on Saturday night, we've got plenty to talk about on the road to the postseason. Subscribe, like, drop a comment. It's free to do so, and it really helps us, so we absolutely appreciate it. I mentioned Frank joining me today, and it looks like he's joining us from the State Library of wherever he is right now. This is a very nice background, a nice-looking house or establishment, wherever you are, Frank. I like it.
I'm at my in-laws. I had baby shower for my wife today, so it's a road game for me as it was for the Bucks.
Well, and by the way, I baby shower for your wife. I don't know if we've publicly acknowledged that, but that's probably a fun weekend for you, and maybe not so much a fun night if you're a Bucks fan. They go down to the Nuggets in the end, 129-106. I don't think it's a huge surprise that the Bucks lost this game. Both teams had their stars playing for the most part. We knew at some point the legs might catch up with the Bucks, but this was a really high quality, particularly first quarter. The shot making was just out of this world. Both teams were firing shots on either end of the floor. But there's no doubt that the frustration took over this game. The Nuggets looked like they did have the fresh legs. The officiating was clearly not a source of enjoyment from the Bucks. Multiple texts down the stretch, and this one got out of hand, Frank, against a team that is the top of the West, a really, really good basketball team.
Yeah, it felt like in the first half. I mean, it didn't seem like the Nuggets had really any plan against Giannis. They only had 3 turnovers in the first half. The Bucks only had 2, which is remarkable. Bucks starters had no turnovers in the first half. That did not continue in the second half, unfortunately. But it felt like the Bucks played with pace, and Giannis getting all these dunks, I thought was representative of that. And they were up 60-50 at one point, and I think unfortunately, kind of let their foot off the gas a little bit going into halftime. Narrows it to 66-63. Neither team had shot the lights out from 3 in the first half. I think the Bucks were like 6 out of 19, and Denver, I think, had made 7 or something like that. But unfortunately, second half, I mean, the 3-point shooting was obviously a huge part of the story, and then obviously the free throw line as well. Just felt like the Nuggets were able to game the officials, much more effectively than the Bucks. Felt like the game became a lot more of a half-court slog in the third quarter. And even though the Nuggets, I mean, they can play fast, obviously, like they can get up and down the court, especially with the way the Bucks were playing, they basically decided that, we're just going to play Jokic 1v1 with Brook Lopez. And rather than, double and get picked apart with his passing and give up open threes, we're going to take our chances with trying to turn Jokic into a scorer, which I think is generally a better strategy. But, we saw why he's won 2 MVPs tonight. I don't think this was his, certainly not peak Jokic. He only made 1 out of 6 from 3, 10 out of 20, which is a very low shooting percentage for him. He's, I think, had 1 sub 50% shooting game since October, but 31 points on 20 shots, 11 assists, 6 rebounds, plus 19 in 32 minutes. Giannis gets the really fast start, but, he finishes with 31 on 13 to 22. But unfortunately, he was 2 for 8 in the second half. Didn't make a shot in the fourth quarter for the 4th straight game. He sat out 2 of those games, so there's a good reason for that. But the Bucks just looked like they kind of completely ran out of steam in the third quarter. And this was obviously, if you talk about sort of the MVP debate, this was an opportunity for Giannis to make a statement. Felt like he was going to do that with that first half, but then Again, just ran out of steam. And I thought the Nuggets like realized, oh, we should probably like double team him, especially because the Bucks aren't shooting well. And, as you said, I think there was just a lot of frustration in the second half. Bucks couldn't buy a bucket from three. So, I think Giannis was kind of like, well, I kind of want to take the game into my own hands a little bit. And, credit the Nuggets. They really frustrated him. And Jeff Green put him absolutely on a poster, just wrecked him with that left-handed dunk. Green also hit that kind of back-breaking three at the end of the third quarter as well. And just small stuff just didn't go the Bucks' way. Chris Middleton grabs a rebound down 90-83 in the third quarter. Jokic kind of bumps him. He goes out of bounds. Chris is just, expecting a foul call, and they say just out of bounds. Just some of these kind of plays just sort of stacked up. And Denver outplayed them soundly in the second half, right? And unfortunately, both the games between these teams this season were marred by one team having a rest disadvantage. But the Bucks only won by 8 when Denver came in on the second night of a back-to-back, resting basically everybody in Milwaukee. Tonight, Bucks obviously in a similar situation. Played great last night. Probably don't want to lose sight of that. Played great in Utah, and just got their asses kicked tonight. Kudos to the Nuggets. They've obviously had some ups and downs of late, but I think again they showed why. Obviously they're the 1 seed in the West. West not so strong as the East, but a good performance from them. And the Bucks, maybe you weren't expecting a win tonight, but certainly that second half was underwhelming to say the least.
Yeah, once the wheels fell off this one, it happened pretty quickly, and a number of the key guys obviously on the bench, as you pointed to. Not to say that the game wasn't already over, it was. But, the back end of this fourth quarter, obviously pretty meaningless stuff. And the Nuggets overall win the second half 66-40. So it got pretty nasty there. As we go through the officiating stuff, I thought another clearly pretty key moment in this game was 79-76 in the third quarter. Jokic and Bobby Portis are going up the floor. And I'm telling you, Bobby Portis's middle knuckle may have just brushed the cheek of Nikola Jokic. And that man acted like his head was about to get launched off his shoulders into oblivion. He gets the foul call. And I don't even know. I don't think that if a guy is trying to defend a guy up the floor, and you might disagree with me, but Bobby Portis ends up getting the tech because it's a flop by Jokic, whatever. You can say whether it's a foul if you want. I don't care. But he was flopping. He exaggerated the contact. I've always said, if it's that clear that you're exaggerating contact like that, don't blow the whistle, because the whistle came so late, and it only came because of the way Jokic reacted. If he doesn't react like that, there's no whistle. And then they decide, on top of the technical foul, that they're going to say it's a transition take foul. So they get 2 free throws and then knock down a 3. They score 5 points. And that, to me, was the start of when things really fell apart from the Bucks, probably from a frustration standpoint more than anything.
Yeah, and it looked like he made contact. I think it was a foul. It sucks because he exaggerated it, which is then gets Bobby, clapping, and it's like, we love Bobby's energy, but was that the most productive thing to do at that point? Obviously, in hindsight, you'd say no. And I agree that the calling that a take foul, I don't really understand. I also. The play in the fourth where Giannis gets the steal and Christian Brown rakes him as he's driving, and it's a side out. Why is that not a transition take? It should have been a shooting foul. I don't know how it's not. What exactly? I now actually want to re-look up what the transition take foul rule is, because he's not playing. He's clearly just trying to stop the play. Giannis should have passed to Chris Middleton. It was a stupid play by Giannis, because even if it is a shooting foul, Chris Middleton taking a layup is a better expected outcome than Giannis shooting free throws, which I think was just sort of, again, indicative of Giannis's frustration and kind of wanting to take it out on the Nuggets. But yeah, just a bunch of stuff, just weird stuff. And in the fourth quarter, it looked like Javon Carter did foul Michael Porter on that weird attempted 3, but then Porter literally, instead of shooting, he just lands with the ball. It was such a bizarre play, and then afterwards they're like, oh, I guess I'm going to call a foul. Again, it's like the Portis play, the Javon Carter play. It's like, I think those were fouls, but it's just, just the circumstances obviously were frustrating for the Bucks. And again, they didn't keep their heads, they didn't keep their cool, and I don't think they reacted to things not going well for them in a productive way, to say the least. I don't think Giannis reacted well to things not going his way in the fourth quarter, and again, they got their butts kicked because of it.
We've all been there before when you have what is essentially a red-eye flight that by the next afternoon, even just the slightest thing is really going to piss you off. And this looked like a Bucks team that had been on the red-eye and they were a little bit tired and perhaps a little bit grumpy, and things were just getting on their nerves towards the back end of this game. I do want to talk a little more specifically about the matchup between Jokic and Brook Lopez defensively, though, because, look, we've discussed about the Bucks not having a traditional backup five. I guess Myers Leonard is the guy. So I want to get into that conversation in just a little bit after I once again talk about our friends over at the Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. This is a pretty cool game. I don't play phone games. I don't play computer games at all, but I've given this one a little whirl, and I can tell you it is quite a bit of fun, actually. It can soak up a serious amount of time on your phone. You get to manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season and lead your team to glory. You can do all sorts of things. You can hire coaches, fire coaches, trade players, get involved in the draft stuff. You can navigate the franchise through the offseason free agency. So if you're a Bucks fan, get excited about the options you've got this offseason, and you can call your own shots there as the GM. So Locked On Bucks listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. Make sure you check it out. Download the game. Just visit probasketballgm.com or scan the code on the screen right now. Or you can look it up on the app stores. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. So Brook Lopez just plays 19 minutes in this game. We already mentioned what Jokic was able to do. Giannis had 4 steals in this game. A couple of those did come when he was able to pick the pocket of Jokic there a little bit, particularly one very early in the game on a switch where they were able to score in transition. And you're like, okay, this is some exciting stuff. And then I just thought the physicality of Jokic combined, and it's not, look, we're not going all Monty Williams here. We're not blaming the officials or saying that that's the reason the Bucks lost. But Michael Malone picking up that technical very early for the way Lopez was guarding Jokic. I mean, Jokic is a physical beast, and the way that he backs you down, he forces you to be as physical as Brook Lopez was. He got in foul trouble and only played 19 minutes in this game. And we did see the exposure that you get when you've got a guy like Jokic, and I imagine it'll be similar with Joel Embiid if it's Bobby Portis forced to have big minutes on them defensively. What did you think about the way it played out with Jokic and Lopez tonight? And quite clearly, Jokic is a pretty unique player.
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. Again, you hold him to 10 out of 20 from the field. Right. He got to the line 11 times, made 10. So he punished you there. Still had 11 assists, even with the Bucks not sending tons of doubles his way. So, I mean, he's just an absolute handful. And I mean, we obviously in the first half, you saw him kind of standing around while the Bucks were able to get to the rim for easy finishes. In the second half, I think Giannis had a couple of chances to kind of size him up, settled for jump shots a couple times. I think they were like late clocks type situations that he missed, and then had another situation where he drove on him and missed not an easy left-handed layup. So I didn't feel like they were really ever able to really attack him in kind of the 1v1, especially in the second half. Like they never really seemed to really get him into too much trouble. And the other thing on the back-to-back, like, let's be honest, last night that was like the perfect first night of a back-to-back. Yes. Chris Middleton didn't play. Chris was not particularly good tonight. 6 out of 14, just 13 points. Drew Holiday, Giannis, like none of those guys played in the fourth quarter. What they play, like 23, 24 minutes, something like that, right? Like, I mean, if you couldn't have drawn up a better first night of a back-to-back than what we saw in Utah. So, I mean, again, like, I think the 2 straight games of altitude obviously makes it really hard. But again, it is what it is. And I get it. Like, the schedule over the next, week or so, like, sucks. And you're going to take probably an extra loss or 2 because of that. But it's 82 games, right? Like, everybody plays the same number of games over the same amount of time. It just so happens, unfortunately, like, these games are coming here towards the end of the season when we're obviously like really hyper focused on the standings and trying to lock up the 1 seed. So I don't know. I mean, like, I just can't get too riled up about like scheduling and stuff, because at the end of the day, like, you pay me now, pay me later. Unfortunately, the Bucks didn't have as many of these issues early in the season, and at the end of the day, I mean, didn't the Bucks come? What were they, 8-1 on the second night of back-to-backs coming into this game? They were similarly awesome on the front night of back-to-backs. I mean, they have been. I think they have a better record in back-to-back scenarios this year than they do, a winning percentage this year than they do overall. So they've managed to kind of work their way through back-to-backs extremely well over the course of the season. I think this is just their second loss in 10 games, I think, on second night of back-to-back, something like that. So this is pretty rare, actually, that this happens to them. Like, generally, they've been great. They've only lost one other game on the second night of a back-to-back. So it's not ideal, but, it's the NBA. Like, this stuff happens. And, again, Denver, you could argue, lost the first game because of that in Milwaukee. So, pay me now, pay me later. It sucks. It would have been great to see these two teams facing off when neither was a rest disadvantage, so that we would have had, a bit of a kind of cleaner kind of matchup and maybe a better measuring stick of where both teams were. But, even putting the rest aside, I think Denver obviously was just way better tonight than the Bucks, and, take the L and move on, right? Can't dwell on it at this point.
And as we've been watching all these teams, so the Bucks now 2 games in the loss column ahead of the Celtics. Obviously, they play at the back end of this schedule stuff that we've been talking about later this week. The Sixers right now are playing in Phoenix. They played in San Francisco last night as well. So it's fair to say, the Sixers haven't had a great period here with the schedule as well. And as we've discussed multiple times, I think, going back a few weeks ago, they had the hardest schedule in the NBA. And if the Sixers do go ahead and lose that game, they'll be 4 losses behind the Bucks with only about 8 games to play. So it does look at least like it's shaping up to be a Bucks and Celtics race for the number 1 seed here. Anything positive, Frank, from tonight's game in Denver? You can go back to Utah if you want. Obviously, that was a pretty nice night at the office if you're a Bucks fan. If we do go back to last night, clearly Pat Connaughton breaking out and knocking down some threes is something we've discussed a little bit, and he was pretty good in a low-stress situation.
Yeah, I mean, Grayson Allen to start yesterday's game was obviously terrific. Brook Lopez's defense to start that game. I mean, Brook Lopez's defense throughout that game, obviously. Right. But Grayson to start the game, and then Pat obviously hitting threes kind of throughout. Obviously, would have been nice if those guys had saved some of those made threes. 9 out of 36 tonight. Grayson Allen, the only Buck that hit multiple threes, which is a pretty rare stat to be able to pull out in a game like this. But yeah, I mean, the Utah game was just, they looked like a machine, and kind of no notes, right? Like they were just really good. And anytime you can basically play the fourth quarter, basically make the fourth quarter, essentially just garbage time, that is a very good place to be. So, it felt like a split was the most likely outcome of these 2 games, given the circumstances and the quality of the teams. Utah obviously was missing a bunch of guys last night as well, so not exactly like a full strength Jazz team that you're facing, but they took care of business. They were effective, got in, got out. And then obviously were able to move on and at least give themselves the best possible chance of being as rested as they could be for tonight's game. But, again, like this game, right, like the 3-point variance story, right? Bucks 9 out of 36, Nuggets 15 out of 36. So exactly 6 more makes by the Nuggets. That's 18 points. I mean, they win by 23. So you can't say like that the Bucks outplayed them if not for that. Unfortunately, just a game that the Bucks lost in a few different ways. And I was almost surprised to see that it was only a +7 free throw attempt differential for the Nuggets tonight, because it certainly in the third quarter felt like a lot more. But that's just the way this one shook out. And again, I mean, at this point, honestly, hopefully Giannis's hand took another kind of blow there in the fourth quarter when Brown hit him on the fast break when he reacted. But again, obviously at this point, you're getting so late in the season. Also, just getting through games with your health and surviving and advancing in that respect, health wise, is pretty damn important. So, yeah, I'd say about a chalk weekend for the Bucks, and now obviously you get a chance to hopefully just take care of business and not let any slip ups happen here heading to Detroit, where obviously you really expect to win that game. And I don't know if the Pistons particularly care too much if they do anyway. So we'll see. We've seen the Pistons be banana peels. We saw Indy, which is obviously a much better team than Detroit, but we've seen some of these games end up becoming banana peels. And I think at the rest of this way, the formula is kind of win the games you're supposed to win, and then you've got a couple of kind of marquee showcase games against the Celtics and Sixers. And, at this point, certainly if we're going to have any more Giannis MVP discussions, which let's be honest, like the next 24 hours, like not the time to be making big proclamations about Giannis being MVP. He didn't make that big statement game tonight, unfortunately, but national showcases against Joel Embiid, that's probably the single biggest game left. If you ask me which game I most want to win, Kane, I would say it would be that Sixers game. Strategically, you could argue the Boston game is actually more important in terms of the number one overall seed, especially given Philly's schedule and where they are in the standings. As we speak, they're down 6 going into the fourth quarter, so we'll see how that game goes in Phoenix for them. But anyway, I think emotionally, especially after that Philly loss a couple weeks back, I would very much like to see the Bucks get a matter of revenge against Philadelphia. But anyway, so it goes.
All right, some post-game reaction from Mike Budenholzer coming up, because I was curious to at least say what would be said after this game. So we're going to talk about that when we get back here. After we talk about FanDuel, the NCAA tournaments are heating up, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. Just go to fanduel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no sweat first bet. I've got the FanDuel Sportsbook app open in front of me right now. The Bucks still favorites to win the title overall, plus 260. Boston Celtics plus 330, and then the Phoenix Suns in the mix there on the third line. As far as the NBA Finals, the Bucks and Suns are the favorite for a finals matchup, plus 650, but those pesky Denver Nuggets plus 700. It would be a fascinating NBA final series there. So if you want to get involved in that action, you can do so at fanduel.com/lockedon. Sign up today and claim your no sweat first bet. That's all you have to do. Go to fanduel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. So our good friend Eric Name, who, by the way, promised a final run for the Bucks in the fourth quarter that never came. So Eric Name out here making promises to his good friends that he can't keep. Keep that in mind, Eric Name. But he did tweet out tonight that he said, Mike Budenholzer after the game said, we just got beat tonight. They were better than us. We'd have loved some of the things to have gone differently, but it's not about that. And let me just tell you right now, that is the way I personally want my coach to act after you lose a game. I can come on this podcast and say whatever I want. I think I saw what I saw out there. I don't think it was the best night in terms of the officiating towards the Milwaukee Bucks. I agree overall. That's not why they lost. But look, it was just some added frustration. Clearly, the players felt it in the moment. But I prefer that than Monty Williams coming out here and having a breakdown in every single press conference that they lose because they're getting no free throws. So, hey, that's a win for Mike Budenholzer in my books over Monty.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have, again, like with some of the more controversial plays tonight, we're like, when you're getting to like, well, it was a foul on the Bucks, but something about it we didn't like. Yeah, it's probably not the time to necessarily go full scorched earth Fred VanVleet on the officials. Hopefully that officiating crew will not see the light of day in the playoffs. Hopefully they'll be, I don't know, whatever the officials do in the off season by that point. But whatever. I know some people want want Bud to light up the officials and whatever because it makes us feel better and whatever.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, choose your battles. Again, I think also you lose credibility a little bit when you're kind of using that as a point in a game like this where I think the other team was just better. And again, there are reasons rest-wise, etc., why they had some advantages, but again, take the L, move on. I don't want to say burn the videotape because it wasn't like a burn the videotape type game. It wasn't that bad, but
no.
But certainly not a game that the Bucks are going to look back on as as we think about their season in review and the highlight package of the season. But anyway, yeah, we'll keep it moving.
All right, 3 games this week on the slate, so it's going to be busy here on Locked On. Bucks, before we wrap it up, though, just two quick other points from the weekend, from last night's game against Utah. Joe Ingles returning to Utah was nice. Like, sometimes you see the thank you videos, the tribute videos, and I kind of roll my eyes. This one was pretty legit. Joe, obviously, pretty nice about things he had to say about Utah. The crowd was cheering him when he was knocking down threes. They were disappointed when he missed his first one, so that was nice to see. And the other one was Big Thanasty back in the lineup and throwing down a dunk and then forgetting that he has to get back on defense. And Giannis is screaming at him to go down the other end and actually play some defense. So it was nice to see Thanasis out there. And Giannis understanding that we've seen before that Thanasis can get in the bad books of Bud for those types of situations where he's celebrating 10 seconds after a dunk and not defending. So a couple of at least funny moments towards the back end of the game last night, which was, I think you tweeted it out, but I was cracking up on my couch looking at Joe Ingles and Middleton and Drew. I've never seen three guys have more fun than those three on the bench at the back end of that Utah game.
Something hilarious was going on. Early in the fourth quarter, they were just like, the three of them were just like laughing their asses off together, and they kept going to them. And it really was like, I guess it's from Goodfellas, right? The like, I tweeted out some gif of like Ray Liotta, like just this exaggerated laughter. And it's like, what are they laughing at? And then by the end, though, like when Thanasis was dunking and all that, right, the whole team was at that point. And I was jealous of this night, like the Nuggets bench when Jeff Green absolutely annihilated Giannis on that dunk early in the fourth, like they were enjoying that perhaps even more so than the Bucks enjoyed that Thanasis dunk last night, as they should have, because that was an incredible play. And we've seen Giannis be on the business end of a couple posters here of late between that and the Miles Turner dunk, where again, momentum is a bitch. I would say when a guy comes flying at you and you're kind of like flat-footed, even Giannis is liable to bounce backwards and not be able to really challenge at the rim. So anyway, can't be a great defensive player if you kind of duck out of those types of situations. But at least the Bucks had a little bit of fun on this game. And yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the box score again. I mean, Joe was certainly probably the worst game Joe's had in a while. Like just missed one shot, 2 for 2 free throws, minus 19 in 19 minutes. Drew Holiday, this might be something to talk about at some point this week. I mean, I hope Drew can kind of turn things around a little bit. It feels like we've had a lot of like very mediocre to bad Drew Holiday offensive games of late. And I thought tonight he looked really kind of out of it defensively at the start of this game, kind of losing Jamal Murray a few times. So I don't know. I mean, again, like Drew shouldered such a burden for so much of the season while Chris was out that, you know, you forgive him for having some off-color games. But obviously you want him playing at his best. His March numbers his shooting numbers are still pretty good, even though his scoring is way down. But certainly I think just with, again, some of the depth, Brook Lopez having some really big games as well offensively, you know, they've been able to kind of share the load, and Drew's individual numbers coming down a little bit as a scorer. But again, at this point, like more about just keeping guys healthy and just trying to kind of win the games you're supposed to heading into the playoffs.
No doubt. And last update here, there's no point in doing this because people, by the time they listen, the game will be over. But the Suns are up 15, so maybe there's something to salvage from tonight.
Don't jinx it.
That's right. Maybe something to salvage. And if there ends up nothing to salvage from tonight, I absolutely deny any blame or take any fault for what could be about to happen there in Phoenix. All right, let's wrap it up. 3 games this week, as I said. So we'll have shows right through the week, post-game shows, finishing off on Thursday night with that game against Boston, which is going to be the big one of the week. But we're going to get there first. The Bucks 2 games ahead of the Celtics in the loss column, so that is absolutely the watch as we roll through the week. Also, check out the Locked On Game to Game podcast for news, stats, info, analysis from the Locked On hosts around the network, around the country, around the world. In this case, Locked On Game to Game on your Locked On NBA feed. Frank, I'll let you get back to enjoying that fantastic venue you find yourself in right now.
A lot of rich mahogany going on here at my in-laws' place. So might have to peruse some old books or something like that here to take my mind off this Bucks loss. But enjoy your weekend, Kane.
Will do. And everyone else, enjoy the rest of your weekend as well. We've got a show tomorrow because it's the start of a new week. So we'll catch you all